The ground shook before I heard the sound, and I dropped the wrench in my hand and looked up at a sky that had gone the color of a fresh bruise. I knew that color. I had seen it once before, 10 years ago, and my whole body remembered it faster than my mind could catch up. A shadow spread over the fields, wide enough to swallow 3 barns, and my heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might break through. I stood frozen between the broken irrigation pump and the edge of the alfalfa field, watching a shape the size of a cathedral drop out of the clouds and settle onto the land like it owned it. 10 years. 10 years since the sky had opened once before, and strange ships had come down over half the world. Since soldiers with insect eyes and armored skin had walked out of them speaking words no human ear could untangle. 10 years since I was a 19-year-old farm girl who ran the wrong way during an evacuation and ended up locked inside an abandoned alien shuttle with a weapon pointed straight at my face. I remember the fear from that day like it happened this morning. I remember thinking I was about to die in a stranger's ship in a stranger's war. But the being holding that weapon had been wounded, bleeding a strange violet fluid from a wound along her side, and she had been more afraid of the hunters chasing her than she was of me. I had helped her. I don't fully know why, even now. Maybe because she looked as terrified as I felt. Maybe because some part of me understood that a cornered creature, no matter the shape of its body, deserves a chance. I hid her for 6 days in Henry's old grain silo, while human and alien soldiers searched every barn and ditch for miles. I gave her food, bandages meant for tractor accidents, and silence, when silence was the only thing that could keep her alive. On the 6th night, she vanished. No goodbye. Just one word, carved into the silo wall in sharp alien script that I later learned meant debt. I told myself that was the end of it. Wars end, strangers disappear, life goes back to fixing pumps and mending fences. But now the ship in front of me was lowering its ramp, and every hair on my arms stood up straight, because I knew, with a certainty that made my knees weak, that this was not over at all. Soldiers marched down first, dressed in dark ceremonial armor, their weapons held low instead of raised. That detail alone made my throat go dry. Lowered weapons from an alien force meant something enormous. It meant they were not here to conquer. It meant they were here for someone specific. Then she stepped out. She was taller than I remembered, or maybe I had shrunk her down in my memory into something my mind could survive. Her crown was different now, thicker, edged with glowing markers that pulsed faintly along ridges of her own exoskeleton. Her eyes were the same violet I had stared into a decade ago, while my hands shook wrapping a wound that wasn't supposed to heal. She looked straight at me, and every soldier behind her stopped moving, like her stillness was a command they all understood without words. My mind was screaming at me to run, to hide, to do anything except stand still in an open field with a queen and her army bearing down on me. But my feet stayed rooted to the dirt. "You cut your hair," she said. Her voice came through a small device at her throat, flat and mechanical, but I still remembered the real sound underneath it, sharp and low, like wind moving through metal pipes. "You got taller," I said, because apparently 10 years hadn't taught me how to speak properly in front of alien royalty. "I did not get taller. You have simply spent 10 years forgetting the size of me." Behind her, one of the soldiers shifted, and I noticed the tension rolling through the whole group, like they were bracing for something none of them had prepared me for. My stomach twisted. This didn't feel like a friendly visit. It felt like the calm before a storm none of us could stop. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice shaking despite every effort to steady it. "Why now, after 10 years of nothing?" Her mandibles clicked, a sound I remembered from the silo, somewhere between frustration and grief. "I sent 17 messages to this world asking for you. 17 requests through your government channels. Not one reached you." My blood ran cold. I never got anything, not a letter, not a call. Nothing. Her violet eyes narrowed, and for a moment the calm mask cracked, revealing something dangerous underneath. "Then someone on your side chose to keep us apart," she said quietly, and the words landed heavier than the ship behind her. "Someone believed that the debt I owe you was something to be buried." Before I could respond, a sharp whistle cut through the sky, high and thin, and every soldier around her snapped their weapons up at once. My heart jumped into my throat. The queen turned, fast, her whole body shifting into a fighting stance I had only seen once before, in the silo, right before she nearly killed the first soldier who found our hiding place. "Get down," she snapped at me, no longer soft, no longer careful. Her voice cracked through the translator like a blade. "Now." I dropped to the dirt as a streak of white light tore across the sky, where I had been standing a second earlier. The ground erupted behind me, dirt and alfalfa flying into the air, and the world turned into noise and heat and the smell of burning grass. My ears rang, my hands dug into the soil like I could hold onto the earth itself to keep from being thrown apart by the shockwave. Screaming filled the air, not human screaming, but the sharp, alarmed cries of Vashtar soldiers scrambling into formation. I looked up through the smoke and saw shapes dropping from the sky, smaller ships, painted a dull gray, cutting fast circles above the field like predators that had found a wounded animal. "Rival broodline," the Queen shouted, grabbing my arm with a strength that nearly lifted me off the ground. "They tracked my signal. They have been waiting 10 years for a chance to catch me without my full guard." "Waiting for what?" I yelled over the roar of engines and weapon fire. "For me to be somewhere I care about more than my own safety," she said, pulling me behind the twisted metal frame of the broken irrigation pump as another blast tore up the earth where we had just been standing. "For me to be here. With you." My chest tightened at those words, but there was no time to think about them, because the enemy ships were already dropping troops onto the field, dark armored figures with weapons that hummed with a menace I recognized instantly, even after 10 years. The Queen's soldiers formed a wall in front of us, firing back, their shots cutting bright lines through the smoke. But there were too many attackers, and I could see it in the way her guards moved, tight and controlled, but clearly outnumbered. "This is my fault," I said, my voice shaking. "You came here for me, and now everyone is going to die because of it." "No," she said, sharp and immediate, her hand tightening around my arm. "This is not your fault. This is the price of a crown I never asked to wear, brought to your doorstep because I refuse to hide what you mean to me any longer." A soldier from her guard shouted something in their language, urgent and clipped, and the Queen's eyes flicked toward the tree line at the edge of Henry's property, where more of the enemy troops were spreading out to surround us. "They mean to trap us," she said, pulling me lower behind the ruined pump. "If they take me alive, they take my crown by force, and they take my people back into a war we only just escaped. If they see you as valuable to me, and they will take you as well, to use against me." My mouth went dry. "So, what do we do?" Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, the noise of the battle around us seemed to fade into the background. "We do what we did the last time the world tried to tear us apart. We survive it together, or we do not survive it at all." A blast hit close enough to throw dirt across both of us, and she moved without hesitation, pulling me up and running low across the field toward the old grain silo, the same one that had hidden her a decade ago. Behind us, her soldiers held the line, buying every second they could, and I heard the sound of more ships descending, more weapons firing, more chaos closing in around a battle that had started because of me. We reached the silo just as another explosion rocked the field, and she shoved the heavy door open with a strength that bent the old metal hinges. We dove inside, and she pulled the door shut behind us, plunging the space into a dim orange light filtering through the cracks in the old walls. For a moment, all I could hear was my own heartbeat and the muffled sound of fighting outside. "You still remember this place?" I said, breathless, pressing my back against the same wall I had once slept against while nursing her wounds. "I have never forgotten a single detail of these 6 days," she said, her voice quieter now, stripped of the sharp military edge from moments before. "Not the walls, not the smell of the grain, not the sound of your voice telling me to stop being dramatic about a wound that could have killed me." Despite the fear pounding through my chest, I almost laughed. It was a big wound. "It was," she admitted, and for the briefest moment, something soft passed across her face, the same look she'd had on the third night in this silo, right before she told me she trusted a human being for the first time in her long life. Outside, the fighting grew louder, closer, and I could hear voices shouting orders in both human and alien tongues, the sound of boots against dirt, the crackle of weapons discharging in rapid bursts. "They know this location," she said suddenly, her head snapping toward the door. They tracked us through the smoke. We cannot stay here. Then where do we go? I asked, panic rising in my throat. She looked around the silo quickly, her eyes landing on an old maintenance hatch in the floor, one that led down into the underground drainage tunnels Henry had built years ago to keep the fields from flooding during storms. I had used it as a kid to sneak away from chores. I never imagined it would become an escape route from an alien battle. There, she said, pointing. Where does it lead? Out toward the creek, about half a mile from here, I said, already moving toward the hatch and pulling it open. Cold air rushed up from the darkness below. Move, she said, and I didn't argue. We dropped into the tunnel just as the silo door burst open above us, and I caught a glimpse of dark armored figures storming inside before she slammed the hatch shut and threw a rusted latch across it. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for both of us, and pitch black except for a faint glow coming from a device on her wrist that lit the space ahead of us in dim blue light. We moved fast, my hands scraping against damp concrete walls, her heavy footsteps echoing behind me. Above us, I could hear muffled shouting, the sound of the hatch being struck again and again as the enemy soldiers tried to force their way through. They will find another way down, she said, her voice tight with urgency. We do not have long. Why do they want you so badly? I asked, my breath coming in short bursts as we pushed forward through the darkness. After 10 years, why come now? Because for 10 years, I have led my people carefully, quietly, avoiding war, avoiding conflict, building peace between my throne and your world, she said, her voice hard with old anger. There are those among my own kind who see peace as weakness. They believe conquest is our only path to strength. If they remove me, they remove the one voice standing between your planet and a war none of you would survive. Her words hit me harder than the explosions above ever could. This wasn't just about a queen visiting an old friend. This was about the survival of everyone on the ship above us, everyone on this planet, resting on the outcome of the next few minutes in a dark, freezing tunnel under an alfalfa field. The tunnel opened suddenly into a wider space, an old drainage junction I remembered from childhood, with 3 paths branching in different directions. She stopped, scanning each one with sharp, calculating eyes. Which way to open ground? She asked. Left leads to the creek, right loops back toward the road, straight ahead comes out near Henry's old barn, I said quickly. Before she could answer, a sound echoed from behind us, heavy and mechanical, the unmistakable noise of something cutting through metal. They had found another entrance. Left, she said instantly. Toward open water. If they follow, we will have room to see them coming. We ran, my lungs burning, her presence beside me steady, despite everything crashing down around us. The tunnel narrowed again before widening into a final stretch, and ahead, I could see a faint circle of daylight where the drainage pipe opened out near the creek. We burst out into the afternoon light, just as 3 of the enemy ships roared overhead, banking hard to circle back toward our position. My heart dropped. There was nowhere left to hide out here. Stay behind me, the Queen said, stepping in front of me without hesitation, raising a weapon she had drawn from somewhere in her armor. Her stance was steady despite everything, and for the first time, I truly understood why an entire empire feared and respected this woman. The enemy ships opened fire, and the Queen moved with a speed I hadn't known she possessed, pulling me behind a fallen tree trunk as blasts tore through the ground around us. She returned fire with precise, controlled shots, striking one of the ships hard enough to send it spiraling off course into the trees, crashing with a deafening roar that shook the ground beneath us. The remaining ships adjusted, dropping lower, deploying more soldiers directly into the clearing. I counted 6 of them, armored and armed, closing in from every direction. My chest tightened with a fear so complete I could hardly breathe. There are too many, I whispered. There have always been too many, she said, not looking away from the approaching soldiers. That has never once stopped me. She moved forward, meeting the first soldier head-on, her strength and speed overwhelming him before he could raise his weapon fully. She fought with a controlled fury I had never witnessed before, every movement precise, every strike meant to end a fight quickly rather than prolong it. I pressed myself against the tree trunk, watching in stunned silence as she took down a second attacker, then a third, her armor sparking where enemy fire grazed against it. But even her strength had limits, and I could see her slowing, the strain of the fight beginning to show as two more soldiers closed in from opposite sides. Without thinking, I grabbed a heavy branch from the ground beside me and swung it hard into the back of a soldier closing in behind her. It wasn't much, but it was enough to throw off his aim for a single crucial second, giving her the opening she needed to turn and disable him completely. She glanced back at me, something unreadable passing across her face, before turning to finish off the last soldier standing. Silence fell over the clearing, broken only by our ragged breathing and the distant sound of her guards finally catching up, having fought their way through the remaining attackers back near the ship. She lowered her weapon slowly, turning to face me fully for the first time since the chaos began. "You could have run," she said quietly. "You could have stayed hidden behind that tree and let me fight this alone." "I've never been very good at hiding when it actually matters," I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline still coursing through my body. Something shifted in her expression then, something softer than the fierce warrior who had just cut down 5 armed attackers in front of me. 10 years ago, you hid me because it mattered. Today, you fought beside me because it mattered. I do not think you understand what that means to someone like me. "Then explain it," I said, still catching my breath, still trying to process everything that had just happened. "It means," she said, stepping closer, her voice dropping into something quiet and honest, stripped of every royal formality she carried, "that I did not simply come back for a debt owed 10 years ago. I came back because no matter how many years passed, no matter how many wars I fought or crowns I defended, there was never a single day I stopped thinking about the girl who chose to protect a stranger instead of turning her away." My throat tightened, emotion rising faster than I could control it. "Did you really think I'd forget you?" she asked softly. Before I could answer, her remaining guards arrived, forming a protective circle around us, confirming that the last of the attackers had been driven off or captured. The danger, for now, had passed. I looked at her, standing there in the fading light, armor scorched and cracked from the battle we had just survived together, and felt something settle inside me that had been unsettled for 10 long years. "No," I finally said. "I don't think I ever really believed that." A faint, genuine warmth crossed her face, something I had only seen once before, on the last night in the silo, right before she disappeared without a word. "Then perhaps," she said, "it is time I stopped leaving without one." She extended a hand toward me, and this time, I did not hesitate before taking it, because whatever came next, whatever storms followed a queen who had just fought through fire and fear to find me again, I understood clearly that I would rather face it standing beside her than spend another 10 years wondering what if. Behind us, the sun began to set over Henry's ruined fields, painting the sky in colors far gentler than the bruised violet that had opened it that morning, and for the first time since that ship had landed, I finally felt something close to peace settle over the both of us.